The broadcast is live, and I'm. Every one of these starts with me sort of sitting here going, "Are people here yet? Are people here yet?" And then they are, and I've always been an idiot doing it. So I'm gonna hello. I'm gonna pretend you're all here. God, if no one's here. God, sorry, I shouldn't say that loud. Every time we have this, should have ironed my t-shirt. Oh no, go! Should have looked at that. Oh, forget it now. Hello from Bavaria, straight off the bat from Bavaria. Alex, hello, my friend. Very nice to have you here from Bavaria. I was just telling Ian, our guest for today, what a varied bunch we get in. This is fantastic. Kat, good evening. Love to have you all here. Everyone else, when you're here, do say hello. Stephen, nice to see you. I ate the pizza early this time, good man. Hello from Canada. Barb, lovely to have you. Ayrshire, again, equally exotic in its own way. Southend, I mean, well, we cover all the areas. Hello from pissing down London. Oh, it's actually sunny in Manchester, which is amazing. Irby in Lancashire, nice to have you here, Dave. Lovely, Christopher. It's lovely to have you all here. Welcome to the Writing Shed. For those of you who have been here, Chicago-ish, nice to have you again. Limerick, hello as always. My place of birth, Limerick. I don't know if I've ever said this before, because I got asked, this come up quite a bit in press stuff, and I got asked about my Limerick, and I have to be honest and go, I was there for 2 weeks. It's true fact, when I was born in Limerick, my dad, God love him, had to go up to Dublin and buy a house that my mother hadn't seen. Bear in mind, this is 1975. If that wasn't the most terrifying experience of his life, and he was in the army. Mick and Nink and Usk from Pontypridd, lovely Michigan. I was telling you, I'd say it's almost half Canberra. I was explaining the Australian thing as well. I hope your penguins are well. Oh yes, I live with the penguins. Yes, the world famous penguins, if I remember rightly. For those who don't know, there was some pictures at lockdown where it was in one of the museums, or it's a zoo linked to a museum, something like that. I think I've got that right. And there was pictures of penguins roaming a museum, just wandering around because no one was in it. That's where she works. So it's lovely to have you all here. There's always a surprised how big a crowd there is every time. Lovely to have you all here. Southampton, wonderful. I'll explain what's happening this evening. As you know, it's the Bunny Book Club. So we're going to discuss one of the Bunny books like we always do. We're going to do it fairly briefly this time about Angel of the Moonlight, because a couple of reasons. One, I've got a friend of mine who's a brilliant comedian / author, fantastic Ian Moore. And then when Ian agreed to come on, I thought, well, we should talk about more than just me. And secondly, to be honest with you, I get a bit bored about talking about myself and my books. So obviously we will do some of that. But then it's just going to be some general chat, and it'll be all the better for it, trust me. Tamworth, Jerry, you can just spell my name correctly. Why do people spell my name phonetically back at me? That's not how typing works, folks. About your big man, hello from Belfast. Of course, Belfast now very popular thanks to Line of Duty, where they've definitely, I don't know if you've noticed this, Liam, if you're watching Line of Duty, they have increased dramatically the Irish sayings Adrian Dunbar sticks in. It's like a running thing now. For anyone else in the rest of the world, he's a character in this very popular crime show on the TV. But he says things like, in the name of Jesus, Mary, and the donkey. So he kind of says the stuff Bunny does, to be honest, except, dare I say it. I will. Bunny's the bear. There, I've said it. Bunnies are funnier. I mean, everyone's getting excited about him saying on the donkey. And you're like, that's a basic bunny, that one is. The wee donkey, exactly, Liam. Yes, and Bunny's got better ones than that. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't know if I have to check the new book now. Speaking of which, the new book. I'll give it a minute where people are coming in, but what we'll do is we're going to have. I shall answer some questions about Angels on the Moonlight that we have sent in. Thank you very much. You've sent them in. If you have any questions about Angels on the Moonlight, stick them in the thing now, and Lane will pick them out. But do give them as quick as possible. We're going to do a few of them. I'll quickly talk about Angels on the Moonlight. What it was like writing it, basic things from what was it like rereading it. And then I shall give you, ladies and gentlemen, I shall tell you the name of the new book. I shall explain briefly what it's about. And as a world exclusive, I shall read you part of the first chapter. So there you go. It's Greg Sorry. Yes, this is the infamous Writing Shed office. Main and fantastic. God, so many wonderful people. Dr. Obelisk, lovely. The corkboard behind me being empty means I can exclusively reveal that the next Bunny book has now gone past the point where basically anything is getting changed other than where certain words are and, correcting spellings. So basically all the cards were taken down in the ceremony today and then ritually burnt along with some blood from a virgin. It's a weird thing, but it's a a tradition. You can't go against tradition, can you? So we did do a little bit of human sacrifice, but nobody you'd like. Shane Starr from Limerick, how are you, sir? I feel obliged to point out, because I took the piss out of Shane last time, that Munster beat Leinster in rugby this weekend. So well done for Munster for beating what I'm fair to say is Leinster's 6th or 7th choice team. I mean, it was still a victory's a victory, Shane. Take what you can get. But lovely to have you all here. Right, I think we should probably crack on. Let me see if we're talking. Yeah, 6 minutes. That's enough waffle from me. So as I said, we're going to do some of that. Then I'll talk about the new book for a bit, and then we'll bring on the Brie and Ian Moore. We're going to talk about his book, Death and Croissants, which I read while I was on my holidays. It was genuinely an absolute delight. I was chuckling away happily to myself, sitting out in the sunshine with the dog sitting on top of me, having a wonderful time. Incidentally, biggest news, forget books. I don't know if you've noticed, the Queensters had a haircut. It was very exciting. David Virgin in Manchester, cheeky, stop it now. But yes, so I've had a haircut. Things are going well. I might even go into a bookshop this week and try and see my own book in a bookshop, which I still haven't done, despite the fact it came out in January. Enjoying Bunny for the first time. Lovely to have you here. Hello, a lot of old friends, new friends. So I think without further ado, we will crack on with the questions. Actually, we'll crack on briefly talking about Angels in the Moonlight, and then we'll crack on with the questions, talking about this bad boy. So, ladies and gentlemen, obviously this will have spoilers for Angels in the Moonlight. If you haven't read Angels in the Moonlight, it's not going to spoil too much, but this is assuming people have read it, because that's the whole idea. I'm answering the questions. I can tell you about writing this book, by the way. I should sort of first and foremost. I think the big thing, actually, I say there's not going to be spoilers. It's going to be a massive spoiler. What am I talking about? If you haven't read Angels in the Moonlight, cover your ears for the next minute. The big thing with Angels in the Moonlight, because people sort of ask about your motivations and what you think and going in writing the book and stuff. And I know this will come up with the questions later on, but I think the first 2 books, kind of everything turned out was a happy ending all the way around. And I think it was something in my head with the 3rd book. I thought, the way this is going, like, it's not going to be a happy ending, and like things will go well in certain regards, but very badly in other ways. And that was a conscious decision, I think, when the story sort of lent that way. Because a big part of it was I felt as an author very restricted. If I had to make everything just ends up as a happy, we're all happy in the end, it kind of takes a lot of the drama out of it. It's the classic Game of Thrones thing. Again, I'm going to spoil Games of Thrones, which is not the thing we even said we were going to spoil, but the first series of Game of Thrones, the big thing in Game of Thrones everyone remembers, and it's happened in other things before, of course it has, and in books all the time. But when a main character got killed off in the first series, that was incredible, because I remember watching it and believing it wasn't going to happen and they're going to change it and stuff, because it was a big thing where you don't kill off big characters, and this was a big name actor and all that sort of things. So when that happened in Game of Thrones, that was a real shock moment. And I think that's important in books in particular. You need to have that element of danger that people don't think it's just going to progress to. You need that edge that something can happen. So I kind of knew. I think this might come up in the questions. I won't go into too much, but that was definitely part of it. And it was just the way the story was going. So yeah, I can genuinely remember being really worried when the book was coming out that people would say it wasn't as funny as the first 2, because if you've read it, it does go darker. And I think there is certain scenes, particularly when we're going through some of the things that happened to Simone and stuff like that, where there's genuinely very dark scenes where, frankly, it wouldn't be appropriate to be funny in that situation. And I think that was one of the things where I developed as a writer, where I had the confidence to go, this is a serious subject matter. We're going to deal with it as such, with the respect and stuff as it should do, because, people aren't going to be making gags in certain situations. Of course they aren't. So that was a big thing. And I remember being worried about it at the time. I remember Elaine trying to reassure me, because I was going, oh God, if I really screwed this up. Because as it was, I basically was going to have Bunny on his own. We weren't having Bridget and Paul in this one and stuff, which was always a bit of a risk. But as I've said before, I always just wanted to push myself. And particularly in the first few books, I think probably the biggest leaps you make are over the first couple of books, because you're trying to really push yourself, and everything else, maybe the leaps get a bit smaller book to book as you gain experience. So yeah, that was the general thing. I think we can crack on with the questions now. Yeah, let's do that. Jerry, yes, Jerry Riley. Jerry, thank you as always for the questions. Good, excellent question. When you killed off Gringo, was it difficult to lose such a good character? And are you bringing him back more in prequels, sequels? I might bring him back in a prequel. He can't come back in a sequel, Jerry, because he's dead. I mean, I wouldn't put it past me, but even I think that's probably a thing. Having said that, his ghost does appear, so there you go. But no, yeah, it was really important, I think, because I think probably, to be honest, in the writing process, I knew fairly early that Gringo was going to die because that, I said that was things wanted to go badly. So it was really important early on. I think I gave a lot of thought to was establishing him, and because he's obviously a flawed guy, but we had to make you appreciate as a reader why Bunny would be friends with him. It's kind of important to see that relationship. They're very different people, but why they make sense, and you get that warmth in the relationship. Because then when he's in trouble, it makes us care about him and stuff. So I know that was a big part of it. And I think you do genuinely, the scene when he dies and stuff, I can remember, I weirdly do get emotional at scenes when I'm writing them. And when I'm rereading them, I get emotional and stuff. To be honest, even in the new book, there's a couple of scenes involving one of the boys from the team. And without giving more away, I can honestly say I got weirdly very emotional rereading it after only a month after writing it. Really odd experience, but it kind of hits you because these things feel real when they're in your world every day, I guess. So, but will he come back? Yeah, as I've said before, there is a sequel to the whole thing that I think I am going to write at some point. I mean, I'll be honest, between you, I probably should tell you this, but my agent was talking this week and they were saying about, we're basically got a fifth book that's going to kind of be in the Dublin Trilogy, because this one happens after, literally about 2 or 3 months after Angels, the new book. And we're the trilogy name is going to be even less and more, or even more inappropriate. And to be honest, there's a good chance there will be other books covering, because basically Angels happens in 99, and then 2016, 2017 or something. I think, no, it's 2016 is when A Man With starts. So there's basically a good 16 years in the middle there. And I have a lot of ideas for actually things that happen with Bunny on the Force and stuff like that. So I probably am going to write books in that thing. So to be honest, we've had a nightmare trying to figure out what on earth are we going to do. What on earth are we going to do with the numbering sequence and stuff? And my agent doesn't want to get rid of Dublin Trilogy. Elaine's not keen on it either. So we're trying to figure out what to do. But that's by the by. But yes, that there will be that prequel, I think, at some point, which will actually explain quite a lot about Paul's history as well. I think I probably will write that at some point in the next couple of years. It was kind of on, when I wrote the last book, it was in the mix. It didn't come out being the one I wrote, but it was in the mix, so it probably will be at some point. Jerry, when you introduced Lopez Zayas, had you already planned to write about Bunny in America? And if so, how in advance do you plan the next book and plot accordingly? Excellent question, actually. Yeah, I did. I think, to be honest, The Day That Never Comes, when I was writing that, in my head, I sort of started figuring out an awful lot of the backstory. So with Angels, I think the Simone storyline was there, and you always end up with certain bits first. The Simone storyline was definitely there, and then the other storyline with the robberies and stuff, and Gringo, frankly, came later. So I think I had that. I think I knew in The Day That Never Comes, I frankly had the idea that Bunny McGarry stateside was going to happen. It did feel at a certain point that Bunny going across was something I wanted to do. And more importantly, it made sense for the story when the sort of Simone thing figured out that way. So excellent question. That was in my head for quite some time. And it's and so with plotting again with that, like with the McGarry stateside books, for example, I knew when I wrote the second book, I knew what was going to happen in the third, and even then I had an idea with the fourth, which I've said before is a bit delayed because I need to do some research and actually go to America, which obviously in the current climate's a bit tricky. But thank you very much. Excellent question. Jackie, you mentioned that Bunny wasn't meant to be a big character. When we first meet him in A Man at One of Those Faces, he's already wearing the black sheepskin coat. Aha, excellent. Was this added in later with the outline of Angels in the Moonlight was evolving, or was the origin of the coat trigger the plot of the book? What exactly was the process? Which came first, chicken or the egg? Excellent question. Because to be honest, I remember somebody emailed us. I don't think hardly anybody has ever noticed that. So well done, Jackie. You're top of the class. That Bunny's coat, the one that he always wears, is given to him at the end of Angels by Simone. He literally takes it off a dead guy and gives it to him. I think I had him in the coat, And then it was one of those lovely sort of collisions of chance where when I was writing Angels, I was like, oh, she gives him the coat. Because before, I think, to be honest with you, in A Man With, it was just he always wore the coat. It just felt like it was right. And then kind of happenstance gave me this is where the coat comes from. And it sort of fit together perfectly. So whichever one is, assuming the chicken is the coat, the chicken comes first in this scenario. But yes, excellent. And another question yes. Can you really hide a derringer up your backside? And did you do any research on this? Excellent question. I can say I did do research in a manner of speaking, in the sense that I've actually Googled it, and that's a fun trip down a little. Not. I was going to use black hole. That seems like an inappropriate phrase in this situation. But yes, I did. People have smuggled guns in their bodies into prisons. That has happened. They've also regularly bring in mobile phones. All those sort of things. So yes, that does happen, and it is because editors brought it up. I think 2 different editors brought it up in the process. Could you really do this? And both times I went, yes. I found it actually happened. Basically, it's happened in prisons. I think in South America, possibly Florida, because as I've said in other situations, anything weird in the world has happened in Florida. But yes, I did do some research, not personal research. Let me be very clear. I'm not that dedicated, but yes, and it really is. And Darren Johnson, but thank you for the question, Jackie, as always. Darren Johnson, are Bridget and Paul making a comeback? They absolutely are. I can tell you, I have a good idea for the next MCM investigations, the follow-on to the final game. That will be coming, I think, fairly soon. I don't, in the next, I'd say the next year. I'm probably shouldn't Glenn will give out to me for promise and stuff, but I think I have a fairly strong idea of what will happen in the next book of them, and I think it'll be something that happens probably fairly quickly. So yes, that they will be definitely coming back, obviously. And which comedian is going to be featured? Elaine, there's another one. I don't know who this is from, but the Elaine question. The question was, which comedian is going to be featured as some sort of villain next? My fave so far is that Mick Ferry shitting himself after being tasered. Now, first off, I'm pretty sure I changed the name of the character so it wasn't Mick Ferry. Mick, by the way, wonderful comedian, a good friend of mine from Manchester. I did name it. I think he's called Mick Sherry, I think, in the book. And to be honest, the character wasn't based on him. I said this before. The reason I use comedians I know is I have a terrible head for names, so I give them the name of someone I know, and then I generally go back and change it. Not always. I've let a couple slip through by mistake, but yes, Mick shitting himself. That is certainly memorable. I can tell you, by the way, Mick is in the next Stranger Times book. I think I've confirmed with him he's okay with me using his name. He gets to be a gangster. Keith Ward. Hello, Keith. That was Keith's question. Yes, I think Mick is going to appear in the next Stranger Times book as well. Cool. And I think if that's all the questions, I think what I'll do now is, ladies and gentlemen, I will reveal, if you want to do a drum roll for yourself, I'll do one here as well, the name of the new book. And the name of the new book, he says, trying to remember it, is Dead Man's Sins. And the reason it's called that is it needs a name, and that works quite well. I'll tell you briefly about the book. Basically, Angels, this book happens at the end of 1999. By the way, I was going to have New Year's Eve 1999 as the finale. That was part of the process. And then I got near the end and it was like, it felt like a gimmick. So I just got rid of it. So that's why it's in that time period. But the next book, Dead Man's Sin, happens because there's a flashback in the day it never comes to. I think it's January or February of the year 2000, where all the stuff with the trying to save the ground, if you remember that. And then this happens in March 2000. And it's dealing with the fallout of Angels in the Moonlight. It's basically some things emerge about Gringo's. Gringo's is dead, but let's just say situation gets very complicated very quickly. So Bunny ends up having to deal with that. He's trying to protect Gringo's legacy. And then there's also some stuff with a boy from the St. Jude's team, which gets explained fairly early doors. So he's dealing with both those things. While he's supposed to be on a sabbatical, relaxing, he ends up having a very unrelaxing time indeed. I can tell you, I've read through them a couple of times. Genuinely, honestly, very pleased with it. There's some, I don't know, it was like Richard Coughlin won if you remember, was a prize to have a character named after you. Richard Coughlin won it. I can't remember. I think it was on the launch day or something, the last thing or something like that. Elaine will tell you all. But yes, Richard gets to be the person Bunny introduces to the St. Jude's under 12s as the Richard Chaplin. Sorry, thank you. He gets to be introduced to the St. Jude's team as the guy who'll take over if for any reason he's not there. And that is, I'm proud to say, it's genuinely one of my favorite scenes I've ever written, because it just worked out really well. And he actually gets to be that character. That was the character named after him. So there you go. And now, without further ado, I think I am going to, yes, I will now do a reading, and then we can get crack on talking to the wonderful Ian Moore. So this is chapter 1 of Dead Man's Sins, and the chapter is entitled You Can't Trust Writers. So here we go. Bunny pulled his coat tightly around him and stared down at the water, the resolutely blue water. How are you, boss? He didn't look around. He didn't need to. Decky, what colour would you describe that water as? The youngster moved to stand beside him and looked down. Do you mean the sea, boss? Of course I mean the sea. What other body of water is there knocking about the place? Decky pointed. There's a puddle over there. Bunny sighed. Talking to Decky was never an advisable activity this early in the morning. Bunny had woken up hungover at 11 a.m. after a night that was longer than it should have been, and he'd not eaten yet. You needed to have a good meal inside you to make sure you've achieved the required level of inner peace to grapple with the peculiar mind of Decky Fan. If he was like this at 12 years old, heaven knows what he'd grow into. Bunny waved a hand at the expanse of water. Let's assume I meant the majestic Irish Sea and not that or any other puddle. Right, said Decky. Well, it's not my area of expertise, boss, but I'd go with periwinkle blue. This earned him a sideways look. Me granny likes them DIY programs, and we've only got the one telly. Right, but definitely not snot green. What? No, of course not. What kind of a dipshit would say that? James Joyce. I don't know him. Does he go to O'Connell's? Does he? No, Decky. He's considered one of the country's true literary geniuses. His school days are behind him, as are all of his days for that matter. I'm currently taking yet another run at reading a book called Ulysses he wrote, during which he describes the sea here at the 40-foot as snot green. He's clearly full of it, boss. You can't trust writers. They make up nonsense for a living. That's an interesting take, Decky. He's not related to Fiona Joyce, is he? Who's that? Girl a couple of years above me in school. She used to be able to belch the whole alphabet, but she won't do it anymore. Says it isn't ladylike. I don't believe so, no. Decky nodded. We just thought of it because she's always making stuff up. Told everyone Darren Simmons shat himself on the walls at Funderland, and he never did. Bunny looked back down at the resolutely blue water as the low winter sun sparkled off it. You just can't trust them Joyces. He glanced over his shoulder back at the spot along the pier where a chip van had just pulled up. Come on, Decky. I'll buy you lunch. Bunny pursed his lips and looked at the burger van's limited menu. I will have... The woman serving him's facial expression made it clear that him turning up and trying to buy something was already a massive inconvenience to her day, and the very least he could do was be quick about it. Sausage, chips, and a can of Fanta, please, love. He looked down at the assistant manager of St. Jude's under-12s hurling team. Decky. Skinny decaf latte, boss. Bunny rolled his eyes. He'll have the same as me. Do you want salt and vinegar? Asked the woman. Actually, said Bunny, any chance of a spot of mayonnaise? The woman pulled a face more appropriate to the question of whether or not one's granny is at home to gentlemen callers. Of course. Will sir be having that with the red currant jus sauce and pomegranate extract infusion? The woman followed Bunny's gaze as it fell pointedly on the sign behind her head that read, "The customer is always right." She gave him a smile with no smile in it. It's covering up a rust spot. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is the live reading of the opening chapter. By the way, I think Elaine just messaged there on say Morgan, our narrator for the audiobooks, is in. Morgan, I fully apologise. If you'd like to apply for a raise, now is an excellent time. So there you go. I hope he's all enjoying that. You all enjoyed that. Excellent. Unless there's first off, I should check it. I should actually let's bring Wonder Wife on. Sorry, she's done her hair especially. Ladies and gentlemen, Wonder Wife, are you there? Pop yourself in. There she is.
Just about visible. There you go.
Hello, lovely. I know everyone basically just hangs around to see Elaine and then leaves. Was that I realised like I screwed up the Morgan, thank you, Morgan. That's very generous of you. I realised at one point I was doing
don't give up the day job because Queeve definitely isn't giving up his.
No. It's a tough business. It's but yes, there we go. I think I got most of the words in the right order.
Hi, Vanya. Sorry, just saying hello to a few people.
Oh, hello, Vanya. Let's not play favourites. Hello, everyone else as well. I think have we covered everything I'm supposed to cover?
Sorry, I'm just being heckled by my watch. What did you say?
Have I covered everything? Can we now get on to our guest?
I think we do, but Darren Johnson's got a very good question, which is, what's the confirmed release date for the new book?
Well, it's lucky we have. I'll just consult my head of marketing. What is the confirmed release date for the new book?
I believe it's going to be Tuesday, the 15th of June.
Tuesday, the 15th of June. That's right. We will have a launch event on the night. Put that in your diaries now. Because also I can tell you, genuinely, I'm really pleased about this. I think we can. Yeah, he's confirmed. I'm going to say it. We've also got a very special musical guest that night, ladies and gentlemen. A wonderful singer-songwriter called Bunny McManus, who's a good friend of mine. Anyone who knows London Irish and stuff, he's the lead singer of the Bible Code Sundays and all that. He's also, random fact, his brother is, I've forgotten his name. Oliver's Army. Who are Oliver's Army? Anyone? Quick question.
Elvis
Costello. Yeah, he's Elvis Costello's brother as well, Ronan. And he has other brothers as well.
I didn't know that.
Did you know? Oh, well, there you go. But Ronan has written, ladies and gentlemen, the official Bunny McGarry theme tune. Yes, a few London Irish people know him there. He actually wrote it ages ago, and we've been waiting for the moment because he wanted to give it a proper unveiling. So that's going to happen on Tuesday, June 15th, which will also be the day the book comes out. It won't be on pre-order yet, by the way, for very boring Amazon reasons. But trust me, get on the mail list if you're not already. Believe me, we'll be telling you plenty of times when it will come out. Don't worry, you won't miss it. Good. Is that all the admin?
That's it.
Excellent. Well, in that case, you can disappear and pop. I shall give our guest is the author of Death and Croissants, Ian Moore. He's a very fine comedian. If you haven't seen him, I'm sure he's lots of stuff on YouTube and stuff. Honestly, brilliant comedian. He's also a very good friend of mine. So let's get him on without further ado. Ian Moore, are you there, sir?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? You can
yes,
hear
we
me.
Can hear you.
We had this thing earlier. No, it's fine. Hello, lovely to be. I'm standing up, and part of the reason is I spent money on this background, so I want to stand up in front of this background, but also because I've got a Derringer, and I'm trying this out for everybody.
Above and beyond.
I can only say it's uncomfortable. That's
yeah. Well, we were having this discussion earlier on today because Ian's book is sort of the word cozy crime is a genre, which is it's one of those things like comedy crime, which obviously this also qualifies as, by the way. But it's one of those things where you're in that genre. But I personally, I think I've said this. You must have heard me say this before, but I hate being called comedic crime or comedy crime because it sounds like a book about three clowns trying to fucking break into a pie factory with a ladder they're inexplicably bad at carrying.
It also sounds like it's watering it down. It's like it's not quite good enough, but we can put these other things in. I don't get it. I mean, for me, when I started writing Death and Croissants, I wanted it to be funny enough to be a book, a comedy book, but good enough to stand alone as a crime book. So it's kind of like for cricket fans. it's like an all-rounder. You have somebody who's good enough to be in the team as a bowler and good enough to be in the team as a batsman. I'd say that to all the American people watching now, because they know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, it is an ongoing theme in my book where one of the people always ask what's the difference and what's the same between me and Bunny, and the one thing I always say we have in common is neither of us can stand cricket. There's even.
My kids have just been. I've just been watching my kids out while you're talking. They're playing cricket in the middle of the Loire Valley, and the horse just walks right across as much. The French, particularly horses, French horses, have no respect for the sport.
See, I do like it. By the way, we should give some context. Ian lives in the Loire Valley in France, hence the death and croissants, as he says in the proper French way. But yes, so we should give people, because obviously I can't assume everyone knows everything. So explain, because you wrote 2 brilliant non-fiction books about this, A la Mode and what's the second one called?
C'est magnifique.
C'est magnifique, of course it is. So explain your living situation to the audience, please, Ian.
There's a joke I do on stage, and it just explains everything. The reason why we moved to France was it was the closest place to London that we could afford to buy a house, and that's basically how it all started. My wife's half French, but for comedic purposes, I say she's French because there's too much explanation beyond that. And we moved here 15 years ago. We had 1 son at that time. We've now got 3 boys, a horse, 3 goats, 4 hens, 3 dogs, 8 cats. I can't remember. It's a revolving door policy that I had. Frankly, I haven't been consulted on. But it's so we ended up here. We just ended up here, and then for the last 15 years, I've commuted between here and wherever I've been needed to be gigging. It's just it's a nonsense lifestyle that I wouldn't recommend to anyone.
I mean, it's the bit where you're in France is brilliant, but the amount of times I was with you at weekends, and you're like, I've got to get up at 3:30 on Sunday morning to get this bus, to get on the thing, to get a Ryanair flight, to get 2 trains. And you're like, jeez.
I remember having breakfast with you in Manchester. We went round the corner from where I was staying in the Manchester hotel. I can't remember the name of the place, but we were in there. I think I was practically in tears. I was, and it was nothing to do with the fact that I had 2 gigs that night. That was fine. I could do that. I could do that. The travel it was too nuts, far too nuts.
No, it was genuinely great. I don't know if I've ever said this to you, because it occurred to me the last time we went out for a drink, because you and me have been mates for quite a long time now. But I do think, because Ian is basically a proper mod. He takes this and this isn't like a joke character thing. He is a mod. He is frankly the most well-dressed man in the British comedy circuit. He's got all the suits and stuff. Takes it very seriously. He's been in magazines for mods, like they have their own little weird culture thing. Whereas I'm a bloke, my idea of dressing up was not ironing this t-shirt. And I have lots of ridiculous t-shirts where a spaceman has got like balloon planets. This is my idea of dressing up. And he's there with his, thank you. Yeah, exactly my point. But this occurred to me the last time you and me were having a drink, because as a writer, you must do this thing where you look at people and you try and figure out what's going on there and what's this group. And it did occur to me the last time we went for a drink, like, if I was me looking at this from the outside, I'd be like going, there's a big fella with the white hair and the hoodie and like looks like he's just fallen out of a jump. And there's this bloke who looks like he's basically Savile Row. Like, what the fuck's going on here?
Yeah, exactly. One of us is a hitman. One of us has a derringer up their ass.
Yeah, that's got to be what it is. I mean, you look more likely to be a hitman, but I have a lot more arse to store a derringer in. Do you know what it could be? It could be I'm your arms jump. Basically, you're a hitman.
Exactly that. You are my contact.
You tell me what particular weapon you want, and I happen to have all of them shoved in my ass. Wow, that's
a good
idea
of arms wear. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm literally not arms up. I should be decommissioned. So yeah, about the book, because you live in the Loire Valley, you also have what's the proper word? Because B&B is very much not the French word for it.
No, I don't like the word B&B. It makes it sound down market. It's a chambre d'hôte. Is how the French say it. Chambre d'hôte. If I'm pronouncing it proper Michael Caine French.
Exactly.
It's a B&B. It's what it is. It's
a very nice one, to be fair. I keep meaning to go, but we've got a dog who doesn't travel well. And then there was a pandemic.
Does he still not travel?
He's been to Ireland, but every time he gets in a car now, he freaks out because he's worried he's going back on the ferry again. He did not enjoy that.
Really?
Yeah. He's been to Ireland, and he loves it when he gets there. But yeah, he just freaks out a bit. But because basically you are a grumpy man who lives in the Loire Valley, who runs a chambre d'hôte. And in your book, I mean, a grumpy man who lives in the Loire Valley runs a chambre d'hôte. This is barely fiction.
I mean, we all go through periods where we have to properly research our characters, and I thought I'd set up. The thing was, what happened was with the chambre d'hôte and stroke B&B is that it was a kind of post Brexit safety net for me. If I wasn't given French nationality, I had to be in the system over here. And we always said when we first moved over here that we'd make this enormous behemoth of a property that we took far too much on work for us. So we started setting up the B&B, and then as I was setting up the B&B and I was writing my own books, the non-fiction books, it struck me that there was a definite character there. There was a base there for people coming to the area that he could work from to be just the center of a web of stuff. Basically, he doesn't understand. And I don't mean that in terms of language, but in terms of being very English, but in the center of a French web where his responses, his emotional responses, if you like, are very different from everybody around him. So he just gets caught up in stuff. And it just kind of worked. You know, the fact I haven't made him a mod. I haven't gone that far down the line.
True. I mean, that's one thing you haven't done. But let's be clear, he's definitely he's an old film researcher, which is basically you've just found a way of getting your obsession with old films tax deductible as far as
you know what? This is the thing, because I wrote the two non-fiction books and I thought, but these aren't making any money. They're doing really well. But non-fiction doesn't really make you much money at that level unless you've sort of pioneered the course. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to put it into a genre that was me, but not me. But that I could get in my views of the nonsense of France, but the beauty of France at the same time. But put it in a story as well. So yes, you're absolutely right. It is essentially my voice going I'm just wagging my finger at people.
But it is brilliant because you do feel like, I mean, even reading the non-fiction, there was the thing where you feel like you're really getting to know France. Because I know one of the big things that came through in the non-fiction books was everyone thinks the French are all laissez-faire and don't give it. But one of the big things you explain in the book is how officious the French are and how actually there is a lot of, weirdly, on a certain level, there's loads of red tape in France. You don't get it
is the most intense place I've only lived in two countries, but is an incredibly intense. It's like and this analogy has been used before, but they're like a teenager. The France is the French, and excuse me if there are any French here, but suck it up. They're like, they want to be cared for, but they reject the fact that they're cared for. If you see what I mean, there's that element about the French, which is wonderful, and it creates this kind of wonderfully, like, I'll give you an example. The last time President Macron did the latest lockdown, I can't remember what lockdown we're in. It might be Police Academy 6 lockdown. I have no idea what lockdown we're in now, but he said, and he put out these new measures, and 70% of the population agreed with the measures, but 55% said they'd disobey them immediately. and that is the beauty of the place. I absolutely love the place because of that. It's just nuts.
Well, they do have that rebellious spirit, which has been pointed out when things in Britain, like, they passed all the laws recently where they made protests illegal, all this ridiculous stuff. And as people pointed out, was that they kind of get away with it in Britain, whereas in France, if somebody suggested it, they would have had protests left, right, and centre. Like, you just can't do that in France.
No,
whereas the Irish and the British will let that stuff get away.
I don't know about the Irish. I think they can protest. They've had their history of protestation. I think the English are too supine about these things. And the weird thing with the French is that they love the royal family. They love the idea of monarchy, and I find that because you go into a French press or like a newsagent, all the magazines are covered with the royal family, and you think, look, you made your decision.
Yeah. I mean, as far as they are the example every Republican in Britain cites.
I know.
Because they say,
they absolutely love the soap opera of it. It's absurd.
Do you know, actually, I had a joke about the royal family that never worked because it was in my accent. This is absolutely true because I wrote for Sarah Millican's TV show, right? And the joke was, people say the royal family bring a lot of foreigners into the country. So do long-distance lorry drivers. Nobody's given them a free house. Right? That was the gag, was just about that, right? But I always try that, died in its hole. And then Sarah Millican, I was writing for her TV show, and we're actually doing something about the royal family came up. And I actually said, look, I've got this gag. It never worked for me. And because Sarah, we don't normally give a gag for a TV show, right, that I've done. But I said, look, I never did it anywhere, it doesn't. And she did it. And did it in Manchester, got a massive round of applause because it was an English woman saying it. But whereas if I say it, they all go, "How fucking dare you!"
Exactly.
But, a Geordie says it, it's fine.
I've tried doing French stuff in a French accent. Never works. Yeah,
it's weird. There's certain things because I've had an exotic life and I've lived in both Birmingham and Manchester. But as a stand-up, I had an interesting thing where in Manchester, I never got the home field advantage. Like if I go, I live in Manchester now, they'll go, well, aren't you lucky? You just don't get the home field advantage. Whereas in Birmingham, I would go back 7 or 8 years after living there and say, I used to live in Birmingham and it was a bit shit. They go, yay, it is.
Well, I mean, firstly, Birmingham is the friendliest place you can do comedy in the UK anyway. That's a given. And Manchester is the second least friendly place you can do comedy. You just can't. I mean, I remember because I compare the Manchester Comedy Store when I was there quite often, and I remember walking on stage, and I always had this kind of difficulty. How would I open up to these people because my voice and stuff? And you go, well, look, all right, I've got a southern accent, but I was born in the northwest, and I now live in France. And just this heckle came at the back, mate, and just went, if you were Muslim, you'd have everything we don't like. And this was in the first 60 seconds of a late night show I'm hosting in Manchester. Christ, where am I? Okay, all right. That was the wrong start. There's nothing. If you're not local, you have to work harder. It's as simple as that.
No, you do. But the thing is, whereas in Birmingham, just saying I lived there was enough. By the way, we should explain for any English people at the count of 3. We've never discussed this directly, but I guarantee any other comedian would say the same thing. So on the count of 3, shall we both say the city that's the hardest one to do gigs in?
Liverpool.
Yeah, exactly. Liverpool. Yeah, what do we do 3? I love Liverpool, but you have to learn how to play there. I remember Jason Cook, a brilliant comedian, telling me the whole thing with Liverpool is you have to I saw Jason rip it up in Liverpool, and the whole thing was he just went, I had a set plan, but let's just talk about how great you people are. And then he starts telling them, he just takes stories that happened everywhere else and says they happened there, and they loved him as a god. But yeah, Liverpool, I like Liverpool, but it is very insane.
The first time I ever gigged in Liverpool, did you ever come across a Liverpool MC called Terry Titter.
No, I can't say I have. I remember that name. Good Lord, that is very...
He wore a spangly jacket and he rouged his cheeks. Dreadful man. And me and Daniel Kitson were open spots that night. Daniel did all right, but I absolutely died on my hole. And after I finished, he actually walked on stage and put his arm around me and went, "Yeah, next time, mate, just fucking kill yourself, all right?"
Wow, bloody hell! I do remember having the worst deaths, because weirdly, I mean, as well as an open spot, you have deaths, but the thing that my sort of thing is, because I had, probably like yourself, I had MCing skills and stuff, that even when gigs were tough, I could generally find a way.
Absolutely. Because
it's just to say MCing, like basically when you chat to the crowd and stuff to explain for everyone else. Whereas like my friend Gary Delaney, who's an absolutely fantastic comedian who I think everyone knows is a good friend of mine, I support him on tour, but he does one-liners. And he's actually got a skill set now where he chats to the audience a lot more than he used to. He used to be very deadpan though. And the thing with that is when it works, it's, I mean, oh my God, unfollowable when it works, and it really does work. And, you know, and then, but when it didn't, it could die in its arse. And he'll tell you himself, he's had a lot of deaths back in these early days, not anymore, thankfully. But whereas I was always like, I could find a way through it and, you know, kind of get through. But Liverpool, when I can remember having doing an open spot. Doing an open spot in what was then the Laughter House in Liverpool, which is it's the one in the basement. But basically there was I was doing an open spot to explain for everyone else is you go up, it's like a trial, it's like a thing. You go up, there's usually no money, you're literally just showing up for free. I'd come up from London, where I was living at the time, all the way to Liverpool, which is a good 4 or 5 hours driving. I'd come up. Neil Delamere, who's a lovely man, Irish comedian, who we genuinely figured out in the space of like 40 seconds that his auntie lives 3 doors up from my ma. And there was an American woman who was also on the bill. And it confirmed every stereotype she had about the Irish. That within literally 45 seconds, where do you live? Oh, Dublin. Where about Manchester? Oh, where about? Oh, my auntie, Wood Park. Oh, my auntie's like, oh, yeah, she jumped around. Like literally, that was the conversation. Yeah. And he's a lovely man, Neil. But he was headlining that, and I did my open spot and died on my arse. And because I didn't, and I think they took something I said as being anti-Liverpool that wasn't, but that was it. And then I was early enough in my career that I didn't have the skills to pull it around. So it was just, why is no one laughing? Oh, and it's like that sort of horrible slow fall. But my biggest memory though, there was a hotel called Formula One that was opposite that I booked into because it was cheap.
A French chain. It's a French chain now.
Oh my God! Is it where they put their heroin addicts? Because it's where Liverpool puts their heroin addicts.
It's basic. Let me put it that way. It's
basic.
I think in France, it's where they normally store cheap wine. They don't put people in those rooms normally. It's just like a Van der Table thing.
Oh my God, I remember Jenny was the scariest night in my life where I had to walk over 2 guys to get, like, literally they're in the hall. I had to climb over them. I've just had the worst death in my life where I was literally stared into crying almost. I get in front of one of the Irish comedians, and there's always one of those things where because I started in Britain, when you meet the Irish guys, it was a big deal. I was like, oh, you see me be awful. Like that was just, everything was bad about it. And I had to climb over this guy. The door didn't lock. And I was exhausted because I'd driven all the way from London. I was supposed to sleep for like 5 hours, get up and go back. And I had to be in work at like 10 o'clock the next morning. And I remember lying there in this horrible little, this thin mattress, not being able to sleep because I kept running the gig over my head. And because I could hear the guys outside who sounded like they were trying other doors. And eventually I just got up and left. And I was like, I remember being in the car going, oh God, there's every chance I could die. And like driving, because I hadn't had any sleep, and having to drive home and then do an entire day's work. And that was one of those days when you go, maybe I should just work in IT.
It's one of those awful things that you just cannot let go. The worst part of the gig, and then you have to go home afterwards. And I've because the 15 years of commuting, I remember the last. Because, like you say, if you're a compere and you have the skills, you can turn things around. I remember I didn't, and this was about 2 years ago. I don't know where, I can't even remember where it was, but I just remember feeling just awful, and I didn't get any sleep, and I had to get the Eurostar back to Paris, and then I had a stupid connection between getting from the Gare du Nord to the Montparnasse. And I was running, and I was in the underground. I was in such a fretful state, and I just knew that I needed to feel good about myself again and get on the right train. Just get on that train and get home. And I made it, and I dived through it, and I dived on the train just as the doors shut, and my train pulled off. And no, sorry, my train didn't pull off. The train on the platform opposite pulled off. And that was my train. I dived on the wrong train.
Oh, God.
And had like 6 hours that I had to spend then in France, in Paris, just going, what am I doing? What am I doing? And it was that Terry Titter moment. You go kind of, what are you doing?
But by the way, they've Googled Terry Titter.
Right,
Colin
really?
said, I just looked at the comments. I've Googled Terry Titter. He looks like a cross between Eric Morecambe and Adolf Hitler. And then Andrea said more like Gary Glitter and Adolf Hitler.
Yeah, I would say Eric Morecambe is one of my comic heroes. I definitely would say that out. Gary Glitter and Adolf Hitler is exactly right.
Wow.
It's just an appalling man in so many ways.
For any Americans, again, just to give you some context, I mean, Adolf Hitler, I'm guessing you know the name. Gary Glitter, not a lot better. I mean, okay, but yeah. I mean, it's
Epstein and Adolf Hitler would probably give you something of the.
There you go. Yes, but
it's one of those things. I mean, the kind of.
Sorry, hang on. Terry Titter has a tour. He doesn't. He's pretending. Stop that now, Jerry. I guarantee you, the man is not doing a tour.
TT has a tour. No, that's the Isle of Man TT. You're getting that wrong, Jerry. It's one of those things that I don't know how you found this, but as a writer, because we travelled so much, I was able to build up a bubble as well, where you could be in any situation and you could write. Have you found that? Because I mean, in anything I could just get on my laptop, whether it's on a tube, whether it's on a plane or a ferry or whatever, I was able to kind of create just a bubble where I could write.
Yeah, see, I was able to do that. I think when I was writing TV stuff, I think because I wrote a lot of kids' TV and stuff while I was gigging and stuff. I think I was probably able to switch that off. Whereas I think most of the time when I wrote books and stuff, I kind of because I'm terrible. I can't. Everyone else goes to cafes and stuff. This is why I have a writing office. I used, I couldn't have a shared office. I need to be in a room my own. I don't like other people around me when I'm trying to write because I just find anything pulls me out and distracts me. So, and I want to be completely on my own. And I literally now, the only person that comes in when I'm writing, Elaine never comes down here. The dog comes down here. And I occasionally explain what's happening to the dog in the book. But he just sits there and goes, but he looks happy at everything. So he just go. Yeah, he just goes, "You're going to shove a gun where? Brilliant." But yeah, no, I've never sort of managed. I've never managed to write away, and like everyone else does that. Everyone else sits in a coffee shop and stuff, and I don't even like coffee. It just sounds like I wouldn't even like the smell.
I'll be honest about this. As an owner of B&B, lots of people think they know about coffee. Nobody knows anything about coffee. Nobody. It's just this. It's become this kind of Western thing that we all should. Yeah, I know. I like my coffee. Nobody knows anything. I know nothing about coffee, and I load it up every morning in the machine. Just whack it in like that, and everybody's going, "Oh, what wonderful coffee!" And you go, "Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about, mate."
Well, it's exactly. It's the same as they do that every couple of years in Britain. They do actually probably every year now, where they have it's like a ritual thing where they go around all these various wine things. They get the best wine experts in Britain, then they get wine and they give them a blind taste test. And the ones that usually like come out as the best are like something you got from Aldi for £6, and it's beating stuff that cost £80 from some sort of fine. And it's it's just.
Can I recommend a really lovely wine? This is what you call merch.
Le merch, as the French say.
Le merch, as they call it in France. It's actually there's a vineyard about an hour away from us, and we became friends through various channels. And
because you just drink a lot of wine, I imagine.
Yeah,
One of the main ones.
we were both in a very late night bar. That's how that happened. And they make really lovely wine, and they keep some back for people who want to sort of do marketing stuff. So I printed out these labels, and it's now called Pinot Noir Crime. How about that? It's a new genre. Pinot Noir Crime.
I need to get myself some. We generally we have this idea because we had a brilliant reader went through and picked out all his favorite swear word exclamations that we use, because Bunny uses all these phrases like shit and Nora and Christ on a lilo and stuff, and this guy just picked them all out and sent us the list, and we were like, oh, we really have to do like a collage of all of these and put them together and put them on a t-shirt. Yeah, people have asked about that. Do
you know what that would work well on? That would work well on a kitchen apron.
Yeah, all that sort of stuff, and you can do all that quite easily these days. It's amazing what you can do. Speaking of which, go back to the book. One of the things I have to ask you about, because it's brilliant, but one of my favorite. We were talking about cozy and stuff, and the definition of cozy, because it's a weird thing where my books, at a certain point, people try to push them in, but there's too much swearing and blaspheming, and you know, a man shoves a gun up his arse. That isn't cozy in anyone's definition. Like we were talking about earlier on, I said, you want to be sure if you're cozy or not. That's the line. Does anyone show up their arse? As a
That's the definition right there.
Yeah. But I have to ask, because it's a brilliant thing in the book. It's one of my favorite bits. It's probably the funniest bit in it, where you have the couple that own the B&B. I'm just going to use, I can't say the French one, who are the swingers. Without giving too much away, but they have a sort of swingers thing and stuff. And it's such a brilliant thing, but that had the feel of, is that the guy? Does that go on? I bet it does, doesn't it?
I have no idea. I genuinely, my life isn't so exciting that I could say I've been through that level of research, and the damage it would do to my suits would be more research than I'm prepared to put in, frankly. I can imagine that it goes on, not round here so much. In the Loire, I don't think it would go on so much. I think we're too classy. But the Dordogne, definitely. I'd say that's the only way they've kept themselves going through lockdown. And I make that assertion on no evidence whatsoever. But I would imagine that it was just. It
does feel like a thing that would happen, though. It really does feel like,
doesn't it? Well, that's the thing. It generally does, because when we moved here, because my wife's French and her family's French, so we've had no kind of real contact. If there's a very little expat community where we are anyway, and any that there has been kind of aggressive, if you see what I mean. So we've kind of just waved them away. We seriously, the second week we were here, we were just walking through the market, and you know, we'd been walking through this market for 20 years on holiday and stuff. But this woman just tapped my wife on the shoulder and went, "I do the translations around here." And just walked off. Just disappeared. It was like. It was seriously. It was like something out of John le Carré going, no, I do it.
I mean, if you're gonna threaten someone with that, surely you should do it in at least 2 languages, though.
You should have a whole gamut, shouldn't you? You should have every single language and every flag. So it's not something we've ever, you know. And I wrote about this in one of the books about a guy ringing me up, going, "We hear you go back and forth between the UK and France. We'd like you to bring back a load of Christmas crackers for our English Christmas dinner." I went, "No, what do you think I am? I'm not doing it." But yeah, no, I think I don't know. I don't know about swingers. I've never seen English swingers, because they're very blatant as well in the book, and they're very, you know, they don't hide a lot, and I think that. If they were a group like that around here, I think they'd be welcome with open arms, I have to say.
Oh, well, the French are a lot less sort of.
Well, I mean, they're very, laissez-faire is the word, but also because if they make it, it really doesn't matter what you do, as long as you make an effort, a little bit of effort with the language or just the local community, you'll be accepted no matter what.
I genuinely thought that was your advice for an orgy. It doesn't matter what you do, as long as you make a bit of effort.
That is my advice. These are different times. These are post-Brexit times. If you're going to come out here, open up some swingers brothel. That's my advice.
Well, post-Brexit, because obviously I have the Irish passport. We generally did look into this, and obviously Elaine has the British passport. And we were sort of going, could we still move to France? Like, is that a thing we could do? And basically, I can, and she's fine as long as we don't get divorced. But then she has to go home. If she leaves me, she has to leave the country, which I quite like. It feels like a nice little bit of insurance.
That's a power play. That's a real power play. Well, I mean, I've got French nationality now. I mean, it took me over 2 years to get it, but I am French, as you can tell. I've lost my accent, obviously, but I'm very French now. It's a joke. It's a joke I did on stage. Actually, that genuinely true. I got my French nationality. It came through 2 days before France won the Football World Cup final in 2018, and it was. And I'm not. This isn't a joke. I'm genuinely emotional about the whole thing because it took away so much stress about what I thought would happen.
You threw exams and everything, didn't you? You threw exams.
Yeah, I was really concerned about, my family could stay here, but if there was a reciprocal legal agreement, then I couldn't stay here, and it was awful. Just felt really awful. But then I got the French nationality through, like I say, 2 days before the World Cup final, and then France won the World Cup final, and I never thought I'd ever see my country win an international football tournament. It was beautiful.
Very. But we should say, by the way, because when you're talking about expat communities, they are, because we've all done to explain to everyone, you do gigs where you go to the Middle East and the Far East and stuff. There's kind of like a circuit where you get brought over by the comedy stores it used to be and stuff. And those are kind of, because the expat communities, they're weird. I always honestly say most of the people there are lovely and they're fine. And like they're genuinely really nice and they're generally really good gigs. But you will also meet some of the worst people you will ever meet anywhere.
That's the actual, it's the complete extreme from both. You try and avoid them. That's the thing. You try and avoid them after the gig. That's the important thing, because you don't want to be let down by yourself at the fact that you turned up to the gig and were entertaining these people. That was the thing. I remember Mike Gunn and I, we were gigging, we were doing a tour of Shanghai and Manila. And we did Shanghai the first night and it was fine and there was no real problems. And then the next night we were flying to Manila and we were landing in Manila airport just as an electrical storm hit. And it was hitting the plane, it was hitting the airport. Wow. And Mike and I genuinely thought we were going to die. We were literally gripping each other going, this is it. We're gone. Probably would have been better than actually doing the gig. And when we went out before the gig the next day, I think sometimes you end up gravitating towards these things. We ended up in this place, and we just ended up chatting to this British bloke, and we're saying, "Well, we're doing a comedy show tonight in this bar," and he was like, "What, tonight?" And we were like, yeah, this has been planned for months. There's been posted up. He went, yeah, but it's cheese and wine evening. And we were like, oh, what do you? You can get cheese and wine any night. We've flown over. We nearly died. We nearly died flying here. And it turns out that cheese and wine was just a euphemism for this grand orgy that these expats would have. So there were very few British expats in the audience. It was all It was just a bizarre experience. We were going, have you ever been to Newcastle? No, there's nobody from Newcastle here. They're all their cheese and wine evening.
Oh, because I mean, that's such weird. We flew in to with me, Jim Jeffries, Richard Morton on the thing, right? We flew into the Philippines, into Manila, and bear in mind, Jim Jeffries, who's now a big deal in America and stuff, and all, he's a Australian comic, very good comic, and he's a lovely bloke. Yeah. But bear in mind, the year before, one of the big things that started his career moving, as you remember, he got punched in the face in Manchester Comedy Store, and the film, the footage was became part of his show and stuff. But Jim got punched in the face in Manchester, right? Yeah. We were coming into, was it with John who runs the gigs, and we're pulling up to the gig in the Philippines, right? And Manila, and he went. I always remember he sort of went, He sort of went, there's not really much in the way of laws here. Oh, what does that mean? It was there just isn't much in the way of laws. And he said, as we were pulling in, he said, don't get into anyone with anyone in the crowd tonight. I said, what does that mean? Well, just a lot of them are armed. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And like myself and Richard Morton were going, I'm sorry, what? And then we went in, and he said, like, I remember because he said about there being no laws. I walked into the bar and I thought he was taking the mickey. And then a woman who was completely topless walked by with a tray giving out cigarettes. And I was like, and you couldn't even smoke in a pub at this point in Britain or Ireland. And this woman walked by and went cigarette, and I was like, wow, okay. He wasn't kidding. And like literally myself and Richard then turned and went, can we just clarify, the thing about the guns wasn't a joke? And he went, no. And then we actually looked and went, there was blokes in car with holsters, pissed as farts with fucking guns on them. Yeah. And we're like, Jim Jeffries got punched in the face in Manchester. And these people have guns. And like I went on, I went on, it was fine. I did it, was a bit of crack, it was grand. There was there was a thing where you did basically you were on a stage and the dressing room was behind the bar. And just quick to explain to someone, Richard was MC in the gig, so he'd go on and chat to the audience, brought me on. Then we had a break, and then he'd go on and chat to the audience again, bring on the headliner, Jim Jeffries. He brought on Jim Jeffries, but instead of going back to the dressing room like he should have done, he just said, ladies and gentlemen, Jim Jeffries. And then he started climbing out through the audience, really awkwardly. He's only a little fella, but he had to skip through the audience. Yeah. And he got through the audience like, sorry. And like Jim's trying to start while Richard's still climbing over people. And then Richard came back and sat down beside me, and he just looked at me and went, yeah, I'm not going to get shot, because if somebody shoots at him, it'll go through that wall. It's like, he realised in the interval, this is a thin wall. I'm not getting shot because someone takes a pot shot at Jeffries.
You know what that is? That's a Geordie. That's a Geordie who's seen Get Carter.
Yeah, it's very, very sensible. But yeah, I mean, we did on the same tour in Thailand. We got raided by immigration because this isn't even a joke. This is such a weird thing. We were brought in by one of the radio stations in Phuket, which is Pattaya. That's the bit where other parts of Thailand take the piss out of Pattaya.
Yeah, it's a horrible place. Let's be honest about that.
I would never go back. It was horrible.
Disgusting for all the old white men that you see hanging around the bars. It's just vile. It really is
horrible. I had a joke that somehow referenced like taking the piss out of. It was weird about pedophiles and stuff. It got the weirdest reaction where normally it was like a laugh sort of thing, and they sort of went. Like literally, and like that was such. But we got raided, right? This is how weird it was. One of the radio stations was associated with it because they bring us in. Do you remember those things? They never had us at a proper visa. It's always a tourist visa. Mm-hmm. So I came off stage. It was actually it wasn't the same tour because it was me, Arj Barker, and Rob Deering. It's very diverse. But yeah, I came off stage. Arj, I think I must have been MC in that one, and Arj, John came up and said, as soon as you get him off stage, go over back to the hotel across the road. I said, why? He said, well, we've been raided by the police. What? We haven't got a proper visa. Basically, what happened was the other radio station in Pattaya had reported him to the police. And the other radio station was ran by a guy who was head of the expat community, like the organization in Pattaya. Then it emerged that Interpol had him on their paedophile list. I mean, it's such a weird. And then there was a split in the organization, and they formed a separate organization because some of them were fine with him being in charge. And he'd reported us to a paedophile tried to get us thrown out of the country. And basically we had to go over for an hour, and it was enough time for the police to sort of chat and stuff. And then it was enough time for them to basically give the police a brown envelope, and they went away again, and we finished the gig. But it was such a weird experience.
All of those things they're so removed from what you normally do, and the love you get from the audiences they kind of lull you into a false sense of security. So you come off stage and you go, these people are lovely, aren't they? And then you go into their world away from the venue of where you are, and you go, man alive, this is the Raj, this is the mid-19th century Raj, and they're hard work. I find I love the gigs. It's when you come off that's just the hardest thing. I did before lockdown in January last year. It was one of the last gigs I did. I was flown to Hong Kong to do some big highfalutin corporate award ceremony, and basically nobody there was English. It was Indonesian and Chinese and Indian and all that. And my comedy bit was not what anybody wanted. But and I thought nobody was listening. But then I went into the awards, and then we did all the awards. It was all very convivial and all that. And then I went back to my room after the ceremony, and I just thought, well, I'm going to go out. I'm just going to go out and have a beer and stuff. And I came down, and as I came down onto the reception area, this Indian woman came from another lift, and she put her arm in mine, and because as you know, I make chutney, and she just put her arm in mine, and she said, "What right have you to talk of chutney?" So,
that is an amazing sense and answer situation.
Not only is this heckle delayed, but I just had no idea how to do it. Just an incredibly rich Indian woman. What right have you to talk of chutney? It was the most. In many ways, it was very seductive, but in another way, it was like, what is going on?
That's an amazing title for a book. What right if you to talk of chutney?
It really is.
Oh, just see, is Morgan still here? By the way, Morgan, if you're here, say something in the comments. He may have wandered off. He may have just been dropping in to say hello. But yeah, we've been chatting on. But I just have to ask you, what's the worst heckle you've ever had in your career? Because that's always a thing comedians get asked. What's your worst and your best? Or
the worst heckle? I don't know. I don't know about heckles. I've never had a problem with heckles. It doesn't bother me. The best heckles are heckles help move you along. If you're slightly struggling and you get a heckle, you can if you know the job, then it kickstarts your gig in many ways.
Yeah.
So I've never really had a heckle where.
Well, it is because
there was one time we did gigs out in Cyprus for British troops coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, and this was very early in the days of doing these things, and it was just done in a tent. And I used to do this routine about Paralympics. Which I thought was funny, and it was. And up until I turned up in front of these troop of soldiers, everybody else thought was very funny as well. But it turns out that a lot of the soldiers who were injured were flown back to the UK and then meeting up with their troop back in Cyprus. So at the back of the room were a lot of amputees. That's fair enough. And I'm doing the routine, and there's just silence, just complete silence. And I'm thinking, how am I going to get out of this? How the hell am I? I'm in a fucking tent here. There is nowhere to hide, right? And then to the right of me, I see this naked man. And he just he runs up to the stage, which was just basically beer crates. He just runs up to the stage and dives at me like a rugby tackle, dives at me. And I just step back and he flies in front of me. And I go, good night.
Yes.
I just if it was that's the worst and the best heckle in one.
Yeah, that is incredible.
In one anecdote, really, there's nothing else. And I'd never, and you know, I've never used that material again because I thought if I can't use it in front of certain people, you can't use it in front of. You just don't use it. If you have material that you decide that you think you shouldn't use in front of certain people, you shouldn't use it at all. You know, it's not it's just a rule for me anyway.
Yeah, no, absolutely, as the way it should be, yeah. Because but it is true with the way that thing about heckles. People always do ask you that about guys, comedians, oh, you're scared of heckles and stuff. And you're like going, I'm sober, I've been doing this for like 15, 20 years, whatever, and I've got a microphone. If this idiot can beat me, I shouldn't be getting paid. Yeah, absolutely. Like that's the honest opinion. I actually, my favorite thing was when I came on stage. I remember in Leicester. Do you remember the Jongleurs in Leicester? I think it changed. The venue changed to different things. But Martin Moore, who's from Northern Ireland, big fella from Northern Ireland, was on. He was getting on great, but then there was some guy who was being a bit rude. And then I came on. I was the opening act, and I went, hello. And this guy went, oh, another fucking Paddy. And like the rest of the room went, ooh. And like I remember in my head going, this is brilliant. Because I have done this before. Because as you know, my opening gag I can never get rid of. It sounds weird now with the beard, but mine was always, for Americans, it makes sense to you, but I always do this thing about Father Ted let himself go. Because it was a white-haired priest in this sitcom. And then I did Father Ted, and then I had other jokes that kind of went off it about my appearance. And I'd learned that I couldn't drop it, because if I did, some arsehole would shout it out. And I was basically get killed. But I was like, if someone's getting that cheap laugh, it's going to be me. So I always just did them and then got him out of the way. But this guy did that, and it was brilliant because he was just trying to be basically racist to an Irish guy. And I was going, really, mate? That's what you went with? Let me show you what you could have had. And then I got off the stage and I heckled myself just by doing my opening lines. But the rest of the room thought I was a fucking genius. Whereas the reality was I'd been doing those lines for a decade. That's
the thing. Most heckles feed into what you've got anyway. It's and a beautiful one I saw at the same gig, Leicester Jongleurs. Curtis Walker was the first act after the interval. Okay, so he came on, and Curtis is a wonderful, brilliant act. You know, Curtis Walker should be huge, in my opinion. Just such a wonderfully natural, relaxed style of comedy, and he did his whole set in an American accent. And at and Curtis is a big black man from Lambeth, and at the end he just went, I've no idea why I did that in American accent.
Brilliant.
Anyway, my name's Curtis Walker. Good night. Huge round of applause. Compare comes on and goes, well, we got to carry straight on. Please welcome Rick Wright. Now,
Rick Wright is American.
It is an American act. Came on, and Rick Wright comes on with his guitar and goes, I'm Rick Wright, and it's a pleasure to be here in Leicester. And some guy just goes, yeah, we've heard that, mate. Fuck off. It was just beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are sensational when you get the when they work out just that well. Like, there's a great story. I don't know if you've heard this. Weirdly, Gary Delaney again just does one-liners, but there was this story about before he even started comedy, where Martin Cheese, who runs that gig in London, is that name right? Eugene Cheese, is that it?
Eugene Cheese, yeah.
And he runs a gig in London. And they went to the Comedy Calf, which is another gig. It was a later gig running in London. And Gary, I think at the time, was like running the sound for him or something, just trying to get involved in comedy. And he goes down to the Comedy Calf, and there's a black guy on. And The black guy's sort of, he's doing fairly hack material. You know, that sort of, we all have like this really cheap stuff you can do if you're Irish, if you're, and he's doing the black version of that effectively. And he wasn't very good. And then later on the thing, a guy comes up and starts talking to Eugene and says, I'd love to, I heard you a great gig. I'd love to come and do your gig. And he went, to be honest, I need apparently a couple of drinks. He went, to be honest, mate, no, I'm never having you. And I'll tell you why. Because what you do is racist. He went, excuse me? He said, no, I've seen it. It's lazy stereotypes. It's racist. I saw you on that stage tonight, and I was not impressed at all. And the guy went, right, I haven't been on. Because it was a different black fella. And he just said this sort of, because he'd not realized he was talking to a different guy. And it was just that thing. And the thing is, Gary told that, but the weird thing about that story, Gary told that story at, who was it? Oh, what's the brilliant, he's named after a village. I've got such a
Boothby
Graffoe. Thank you. Boothby Graffoe heard him and said, can I buy that story? So what do you mean? Like, I'll give you 200 quid for that story. Like, I'll tell that story on stage. And he was like, okay, suppose. Yeah, all right. So we sold him. And Ian Carpenter is another very fine Irish comedian, said the greatest gig he's ever seen anywhere in comedy. And bear in mind, Ian's seen an awful lot of comedy. Was at the Kilkenny Festival. He said Boothby was doing a late show. And he had a version of that story that lasted 20 minutes. And Ian said it was one of those most magical moments in comedy where the whole room, it just builds to a frenzy. Ian was telling the story about being in that room, all the comedians at the back falling over. He said people were literally falling off chairs every couple of minutes. It was just that thing. And it was all him telling the story based on what happened to Gary. And it was just an extraordinary thing where I love it because obviously he took it and he's an amazing. Boothby's one of the great.
Boothby is for me. Boothby was the greatest, just the finest stand-up I've ever seen or worked with without a shadow.
Just one of those truly phenomenal people, and so an amazing comedic mind. But the whole thing was in that sort of magical. Like, can you think of any magical gigs? You know that way, the gig where it's just the one where you kind of think back of when you're having a bad day.
When for me, it's not necessarily the gig so much, but it was just the day, and it was the opening day of the 2012 Olympics, and I was compere at the London Comedy Store that night, and so all the eyes were on London that night, and it was the most multicultural audience, most international audience, which always is better for me anyway because I languages and all of that, and being abroad. And then, at the end of this night, because we only did one show because it was the opening of the London Olympics, everybody's going to somewhere else to do a party or whatever. And I went back to my hotel and I was looking over at the top floor of this hotel and looking over at the fireworks. I just thought, this is really big. I was part of this, and that really felt like something. Now I've done Montreal and I've done many other festivals and many other big gigs, but that's the one for me that really stands out as I was there. That kind of moment for me.
Yeah. Oh wow, yeah. No, it was weirdly the opposite side of the spectrum to that is one I don't think it's not my best gig, but it's kind of weirdly memorable. Was because everyone remembers obviously the 7/7 attacks and one of those things where people always ask about September 11th. I remember that after that for like 3 weeks, basically gigs shut down, and it was really weird to sort of start them up again because people had to go back to being funny and stuff. And the 7/7 attacks in London were obviously, and I worked right beside Liverpool Street Station. I think I'd gone full time the year before, so I was like ringing up seeing if the people I knew were okay. And like one of the things would have been one I could possibly been on because frankly I was always late, and I think the timings would have worked that way. But I remember, people don't remember this, but 2 weeks afterwards, do you remember there was the failed attacks where 4 guys tried to blow up a bus? So 4 guys on a bus, and all they did was blow out the back window with a bus, and there was nothing else. The thing thankfully didn't go off. But I was in London that night for a gig, and at the time when these things were happening, there was all these rumors that there'd been, these things that happened somewhere else, these things that go around crazy. It was before, even with social media at the time, it was all these things, no one sure what was happening. And then I was staying with my brothers and they were sort of going, the tubes would be closed down. Then they went, no, the tubes are open again. And I was supposed to be doing a gig in the centre of London for this guy who'd never seen me, and he rang up and said, "You're still coming, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay." And I remember doing it, but the really weird thing, there was an audience, and the reason there was an audience was there were people who just stayed out because they thought they couldn't get on the tube.
Right.
So we ended up doing a gig to people who were basically there because of a frankly failed terrorist attack. But I basically did 10 minutes at the top just about the experience of the day. And it was literally things that had just occurred to me on the tube in.
Yeah.
And I can remember doing a big thing about going, do you know what we should do? We should get Wembley Stadium. I think at the time it was Wembley was being opened up or something. There was like get 90,000 people. We should pack that place out. We should get those four fuckers in. They should sit there and they should repair the window on the fucking bus. And like I was just doing this thing about just doing that. But they just went mental. And then weirdly, because I was supposed to do 20 minutes, the first 10 minutes was just stuff I came up with that. And it went, because it was just like the energy and it was like a release for everybody in the room.
Yeah.
But the thing was then, I couldn't follow. I went into my ordinary stuff after that 10 minutes. No, you can't,
because you've burst their bubble in a way. You know, it has to carry on. We've all been in gigs like that. It's just, you can't follow what you've done with that. It's a really weird thing. And when you change that gear, and you in your own head, you're going, oh,
yeah,
man.
And they're all just do more about that. I was going, I've not got 20 minutes on a window. I was like, I'm surprised I had the 10. But
yeah,
it's like
my 7/7 story, genuinely true. And I never felt good about this, but I was on a train into London in 7/7. I was supposed to be going to a radio thing, and I went to the toilet. I was coming in from Crawley to London Victoria, and around Crystal Palace, East Croydon area. I just went to the toilet, and I got locked in the toilet. Right, so I got and I'm locked in the toilet for like 45 minutes. And then, they opened it, and I was the only one on the train. And I walked out because I was listening to the cricket on my headphones, so I had no idea what was going on. And I walked out onto the platform, and this woman come up to me, and she went, "What's going on? What's going on?" And I went, "Well, Australia, I think they're 40 for 5." And the look on her face was like, What are you, a monster? What is wrong with you? And I had genuinely no idea what was going on.
Wow.
Never. And then you walk out and you see what's going on and you go, oh my God, what have I said?
Oh yeah. Oh God. But we really should, because this has gone on far too long. But there's one thing I have to tell you, because I worked in BP I was a contractor for another company. I worked in BP in London. And this is after September the 11th and all that. And we got evacuated really quick. It was weird, actually, by the way. People say, they weren't sure what was happening. Literally, September the 11th, half an hour after that, they evacuated the oil companies first because they knew who it was. Really? They knew, there was all this about they didn't know. They knew who it was. Like, London knew who it had been. Like, I'm not saying they knew beforehand, but they basically, as soon as there was an attack, they seemed very clear that it was definitely that. But I was then the fire warden for our floor. Right, and I got sent along to this thing, and they didn't tell us what it was, and it turned out to be about terrorism and bomb warnings and stuff. And one of the most cringe-worthy things, I know the Irish people might remember this, they actually played us an IRA bomb warning because they was ring into doctors and stuff. They ring into doctors that the doctor's office. They'd say there's a bomb such and such place. And then, the whole thing was, if you got a bomb warning, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to ask them exactly where it is and all this sort of stuff. Yeah. They played us one of these live, right? The guy's accent was from Navan. At the time, which is sort of outside of Dublin, it's a country thing. At the time, it was a very famous comedy character on Irish radio was Navan Man. Gosh, behind one of I was like, what? Just Navan Man was really familiar. Irish people will remember this, right? It was the spit of it. Like, I don't think the guy just had that accent, but he was just sounded like Navan Man. They're playing us an IRA bomb warning, right? The rest of the room is horrified. And I went, and then I had to explain what happened after that. And trying to explain the whole Navan thing to a room full of English people, I was like, they're just, I'm on a list now. This literally, I've done this in front of the Met Police. I am on a list. And the worst thing was, by the way, it's always a weird thing. I remember discovering this when I read a history of the IRA. And to be clear, I'm not in any way a supporter, but the weird thing was I read a history of the IRA and thing, and they had basically what the IRA did. And the big thing was they said, don't hang around with the Irish community. To anyone that they sent over, you don't hang around with the Irish community. You get yourself an English girlfriend. You get yourself a proper job, and you don't live in an Irish area. Those are the 4 big things. I fitted all 4 of them perfectly, and I was like, oh Jesus. As did my brother. By the way, my brother genuinely ended up on a list as well for a really silly reason. They stopped him at passport control. He had a membership card for Fianna Fáil, which is the main party of government in Ireland for most of our history. Yeah. But because they all were founded at the founding estate, it's got the Republican Party on it. Wow, it's my watch randomly chipping in. But it says the Republican Party. And genuinely, he saw these 2 and my sort of security guys having a conversation, and he actually went, "Oh, sorry, I just realized what you're looking at. It's my Fianna Fáil membership card." He was like, "Oh, no, we're looking at it." No, it is. Let me explain. It's not. You think that's Sinn Féin or something? It isn't. It's Fianna Fáil. They're the main party. They're the person you see standing beside your prime minister on the TV. That person's from Fianna Fáil. And they were like, "Oh yeah, it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. No, we get it. It's fine. No problem. No problem at all." 2 years later, the IRA bombed Canary Wharf. Joe had moved house 3 times in that time. They called around to his apartment 2 hours later, asking him where he'd been, because he was on. And that's the scary thing. You go, wow, that's how you end up on a list. Yeah. Anyway, we should. This was supposed to end about half an hour ago. Oh yeah,
it's terrible. A real high note to end on. If anybody else wants to end up on a list,
But my brother's in Guantanamo Bay, but sure, the weather is only fantastic. I mean, if you could get yourself
honeymoon in Cuba, I don't know what those people are moaning about.
My watch just starts randomly chipping in. Anyway, let's get back. Sorry, this was a question. Where can you get Ian's book? Everywhere would be the correct answer.
All independents, Waterstone, Amazon, wherever you want to order your books, it is available there.
Yeah, and I give it a hearty recommendation. It's a link in my email.
If you can't find it, then don't hesitate to get in touch.
Yeah, I've put the link for Amazon in the email that went out actually this week. We'll put it again. It's coming out on the 1st of July, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
We'll put the link in again nearer the time, and I'll put a link to Ian's website so you can find it in all the different places. Is it on audio? Very good question. I believe it is, because Ian Moore is recording it.
I was hoping that Morgan was still around, because I've recorded the audiobook the last 2 weeks, and then on Sunday just gone, I spent 10 hours just editing the last half of the audiobook. 10 straight hours editing my own voice, and I can only apologize to my family that I exist, frankly, because just what a horrible such. Well, I'm never gonna. I may even take a vow of silence after the next one, because
it might affect the career slightly.
Nobody wants to hear that. But it was fun. It was fun in a way, but then difficult, because I'm not an actor. And not every character wants to sound like Michael Caine, because I think that gets confusing for everybody. So it was fun, but I've bear with me.
Yeah. No, because I tried to do mine, I think, before we got Morgan, as I said before, and you do get a lot of respect for. I'm really lucky that Morgan's incredible, because like Morgan, you were saying about different, because I think you sort of went for the thing a lot of people do, which is the sort of, you don't do too big a performance, you don't do big voices for everyone's stuff, and stuff, because I think that's the safer option, because that kind of do the voices for every character and stuff. You need to be really good, like, because I've seen so many people fail at that. But Morgan is brilliant, and Morgan can. He's amazing.
Well, I mean, I'm in incredible admiration for Morgan for doing it. I mean, I did the audiobooks, my first 2 books, which were non-fiction, but were basically me, so that's fine. I mean, that's just my voice. But with this one, I had to make a decision on characters. And even though it's set in France and most of the characters are French, the only French accent in the book is Valerie, who's the second biggest character. Well, there's two big characters, Richard and Valerie. Richard is English, Valerie is French. That's the combination between the two. She's the only French character I did, but it was just like listening to my mother-in-law all the time. And I love my mother-in-law. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, we all love our mother-in-laws. I mean, but to be fair, I've named two characters after my mother-in-law. So much that actually has become a problem because we had two Dorothys, and one of them was supposed to be quite minor, and one was supposed to be quite major. And the minor one became quite major as well. And now we have to sort of differentiate between two of them. And one of them is a woman basically from Ghana. It is her. So yeah, it's kind of her. Same as Grace, who's the receptionist in The Stranger Times, is also frankly based quite a bit on my mother-in-law, who's a wonderful woman. Yeah. And God love her. I've got great mileage out of her. She's been the amount of people I've based on her. But there's going to be future books as well, Ian. I think you've already written the second one.
Yeah, I've just started the third. So the first one out, hardback, is out in 1st July. Paperback is out in Christmas, and then the second one is out at Christmas as well, which is called something.
Good. As long as it's got a name.
What's it called? Man alive, I should know this kind of stuff. Anyway, it's out at Christmas, and then the third one is out next summer. Well, I'm starting to write the third. Death a la Cuisine. Sorry, nice. The name just comes in. Death a la Cuisine is.
Are they all going to be death and something?
Unless I run out of deaths, yes.
Yeah.
But I think so. Yeah, I think it will be. There's so much there that death.
Good branding. Good, yeah. That's very, very good. Well, Ian, it's been an absolute delight. Thank you for everyone who's managed to stay here for over an hour and a half.
Yeah, I mean, my God, well done, you people listening in.
Yeah, I mean, it's. Let me just check with my wonderful wife. I've just checked. She said 10 minutes ago, wrap it up, 15. Yeah, okay, sorry, love. I've just seen your message 15 minutes ago to wrap it up. I have to get into terrorism stories. It's key to this whole conversation for some fucking reason. Right, well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I'll obviously, Death and Croissants, I shall give you the link and all the emails. And Dead Man's Lies will be out on June 15th. We'll be doing another one of these then. And thank you as always for coming. And we'll speak to you all very soon. And now we can do Elaine can stop it and we can do the awkward wave. And thank you to Ian, of course. And we'll see you.
I'll get an awkward wave as well.
Yeah, let's do the awkward wave and then we can stop it. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.